Okay, so nice to meet you all. As Massimo said, it's my second time here teaching you. Um, my name is Gabriel Pabst, of course. I am a civil servant in Brazil in the transportation department, so I have some experience of almost 10 years with urban planning and transportation systems. But also I have an education in this double degree on transportation systems and energy planning. I came to Germany in the first place to complete my PhD in TU Berlin, and then I got this co-tutor agreement with the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. So I have this both diploma on energy planning and transportation systems. And of course, my main focus of research is the electrification process of the urban buses. So if you allow me today, I will be bringing some information on regard of these two different assessments, so to speak, and I also want to let you all be very comfortable to make me questions and interrupt me if you want. So I won't have to talk non-stop for almost an hour and a half. And yeah, so first of all, I have done comparative assessment on how the electrification trajectories of the urban buses have been going on Brazil, in Europe and in Latin America, with a special attention to Brazil and Germany, because in these regions they are the focus of the electrification process regarding the transportation. I'll be speaking a bit more about that in the future. But what I want you to know is that the first slides that I'm going to present will be regarding the energy part, and then we are going to jump into the transportation. I have not been bringing much infos on the German part because I think that you might be very acquainted to it, but I have brought some very up-to-date information on Brazil and Latin America. So if you have any questions, you can just ask me. So the first questions would be, how can electric buses will be implemented? How they can be done, how it could be done in Brazil, and how it could be done in Germany. So with these three questions, then I found out there will be more three to be answered in order to the first ones to have a clarification on the first ones. So how did global electric bus value chain is configured? Because of course, in order to electrify these buses in these two different topics, you have to set a value chain that could enable this process in these continents, in these countries and in these regions, and how it could be configured in Brazil and how it could be configured in Germany. And so why is it important in Brazil? Because in Latin America, Brazil is the largest country, I think you maybe all know, and also is the biggest bus assembler and producer in the whole Latin America. And in Europe, Germany has a very famous and important hub of innovation on the automobile industry and of course in the bus manufacturing. So that's why these two countries came into my mind. Yeah, so as I told you, this is the energy part, and this is the energy profile of Brazil. I'm not talking about electric energy here, I'm talking about the total energy supply. Because of course, in order to electrify the buses, you have to assure constant and secure energy supply. So right now, we have this amount of, so you can see that's almost like a 50-50 division on renewables and non-renewables, right? So we know that everything that's happening right now with the oil market, and many different countries have been rushing to secure it with all the conflicts that's happening right now. And natural gas, of course, we know that's not renewable. And we are lucky enough in Brazil to have almost half of our and energy supply in renewables. You can see that it's been a rising of the oil, but also a reason on the biofuels, and I would like to dedicate some more time to discuss biofuels with you, because what's happening in the renewable bus industry right now, especially in Latin America, because in Latin America we have a big supply of solar energy. Brazil is a very tropical energies, a very tropical country, so we have a large supply of hydropower. I'll be talking about it with you in a second, and also sun. So the question is, why not to replace the oil into the renewables? Well, the first argument against it is that we have a lot of oil reserves. We actually right now we export it, so it's very important factor of our GDP. And also there is some concerns about the biofuel expansion that I'll be talking to you in a second. So this was the energy supply, and this is our energy consumption. So you can see the biggest one is the transport itself. Why? Because I'm going to show a map in a second. Brazil is a very, very large country, and the largest in Latin America, and we really don't have a very secure and structured railway infrastructure right now, and also the ports are not so structured, which is funny because we are a coast country, right? So it is almost counterintuitive. But because of historical questions, Brazil in the past had to make a lot of contracts with automobile companies in order to secure inflation and the GDP. So what we did was construct a lot of railways, and that's why we have a lot of cars and a lot of buses, and that's why we require that much energy into transportation. Yes, that's not ideal, but that's the way it is. I want to show you the map. Wait a second. Yes, this map. Yes, this map. So this is where the first cities in Brazil came to be. That's where the Portuguese Empire first colonized us. And this is where we host the two biggest cities, the biggest and the richest cities, which is Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. And that's where the biggest industries are. So what you can see, I'm sorry, I haven't told you this before, but this is a map of the transport network systems. And this is Brazil, of course, and this is a map of the transport network. It is important. I could only find this in Portuguese. But this is where we have the biggest, the more important cities in the country. And what you can see is that the network, the transportation network came from here and spread. We don't have much of it here. This is Amazonian rainforest, and this is you can see this is the center of the country. And what you can see is that there's a large concentration of transportation network, and this is not a very good high quality definition map, but you can see that this is the pattern of the transportation. So most of the people and the commercial transactions, I'm talking about logistic of products, comes from this pole, and it goes into these different poles. And the thicker the line is, it means that the more intensive it is. So what we also can see is that the different regions are not very much integrated with themselves. They are very much dependent on this region in order to fulfill their commercial activities, which is bad, right? But also it can mean an advantage, because once that you start to electrify this, center in Brazil, and you can make it very progressively if you want, coming from São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, then more and more you turn the pattern of the network into sustainable fuels, if you want. So it's a challenge, but at the same time, it can be an opportunity.
Sorry, one question.
Yes.
Are we talking about railways over there?
Railways, yeah. I can send you this map by email if you want, because this is not a very good quality. Because whenever you see it on high quality, the color of the lines will show you either if it's railway or subway or whatever, or roadways. But there's very thick lines are the roadway. So automobile. We're talking about automobile. Yeah.
So it includes trains and.
Yeah, we did have a very good train system. If you think on the 50s, so to the 50s standards, but it was discontinued because we have this very big inflation process. And one of the tactics of the government to contain the inflation was to get money from abroad, dollars specifically. So the USA and the Federal Reserve, International Federal Reserve, said that the automobiles company could locate themselves in Brazil, but the counterpart. So what Brazil will have to do is to allow them to construct the roadways and defund the railways program. So that's what causes this very thick lines nowadays, which is unfortunate.
So it was like private, because I was in Brazil last year, and São Paulo and Iguaçu. So,
yeah, Iguaçu.
And we only traveled by bus, actually.
Yeah.
Like the sleeper buses as well.
Which is funny, right? Because you could have done this through the sea. Why not? Or this. Of course, if you want to go inner ways, you have to take either a car or a bus. But we really don't have a very structured maritime transportation network. We could, though.
Yeah, well, we've only been there like a week, so we only had to get from Iguaçu to Sao Paulo, and there was literally no other possibility but taking the bus offline.
Yeah, it was because of this pattern of defunding the railways system in the past. But I can send you this map online, and then you'll be able to see what. So this is specifically on what we are talking about right now. This is the pattern of the energy consumptions in different countries. And you can see that compared to other countries, Brazil have a very amount of share on energy consumption on the roadway. And it can be explained because of this that I have just talked about, and of course the magnitude of Brazil. So the other country would be Japan, but Japan compared to Brazil is like almost a state. Like Brazil is a very vast, which is not an excuse for not having more sustainable ways of transportation. I mean, we have a lot of sun, we have a lot of sea, we have a lot of crops in order to do biofuels. So yeah, pros and cons on everything. And the energy consumption of the road. Yeah. Right now, this is like everything, and this is just the cargo transportation, not particular transportation. But you see the cargo transportation is done most of it by road, and how much it takes on energy consumption, mostly oil right now because of the buses.
Okay. One question. Yeah, how does the percentages work for the energy consumption? Because there's like 93 for road.
Yeah,
so it doesn't add up to 100, right?
Yeah, so the road, this is for the cargo transportation. So the road transportation regarding the cargo is this amount, and the other one would be like private transportation. and it also takes a lot of energy because the buses and the trucks, they are fueled by diesel, most part of it, and the light vehicles, so the automobiles, they are fueled by gasoline, and the diesel is way more pollutant and also energy intensive of it. And in Brazil, the gasoline nowadays, I think it's almost 20 of the percentage of it is made by alcohol, not directly by oil. So you have this. Yeah. Yes.
One question
Yes.
here. So it's bigger than US.
Sorry?
Higher the energy consumption.
It's just distribution.
Yeah, no, it's just this distribution. I'm not comparing the total assessment of it. I'm just taking the shares of it in order to strengthen the argument that most of it is being destined to roadway, and it could be done in a different way, especially to the transportation of cargo, because everyone knows that if you do it by trains, it will be much cheaper than doing this by individual trucks, right? So yeah, and this map exemplifies on how it's done on the national territory, and it has other implication that is not just the low integration of the territory in regarding the cargo, but also regarding the people and culture and different. The connection of the territory, right? Because if you do not connect this whole part of the country to this part of the country, so there's a lot of economic and cultural and personal losses that could be avoided in a more structured assessment of the transportation network. Yeah. And then the question is, of course, you have this vast territory, but you also have a lot of territory to be exploited in order to grow biofuels. We just talked about ethanol, but we could also talk about biodiesel and so on and so forth. And this is one very regular plan on biofuel production, and this is the plant, and this is one of the last government, the federal government press release regarding the biofuels. So what the government is saying is that, so this is ethanol, and this is biofuel, so light vehicles and heavy vehicles, normal cars and trucks and buses and so on and so forth. So what the government is saying is, yes, we have the technology, we have space, we have a lot of territory, we have sun, which is important to grow the crops. So whenever the world is ready, we are very ready to produce this renewable production of biofuels. So we are the country of the future, almost, when you think on sustainable transportation, right? So this is what Brazilian federal government is trying to tell the world. I don't know if you saw in the news, but the Brazilian president was here. I don't know if he still is in Berlin, but he was definitely here last week to Hanover fair. He was in an encounter with the German Prime Minister, and they discussed this question. They even made a test on a German truck with Brazilian biofuels, because the criticism would say, oh, it will never work. The Brazilian biofuel was designed to work in Brazilian trucks and in Brazilian weather. And that was almost the diplomatic mission that the Brazilian president set in this agenda when he came to the Hanover fair, technological fair. And what happened is that the moment that they tried to do it in the German truck, it worked 100%. So it happens not only because Brazil have all the natural resources, but because also that we have invested through the time in biotechnology. So the Brazilian soybean crops are very much developed and enhanced to perform in different weathers. So yeah, this is one of the features of Brazil nowadays. And regarding the crops, we have chosen to do it with soybeans, because soybeans, according to the Brazilian weather, are the perfect crop to be planted here in this landscape, which is this one, because it has just the perfect conditions of sun, temperature, humidity, blah blah. Yeah, we have a very big production of it, which is shown. And this slide, we export a lot of it. Most part of it goes to China. Almost zero to one goes into stocks, and the rest of it goes into industry. And when it goes into industry, of course, it's processed in order to become meal production or in order to become oil production. So biofuels, and this is the world meal soybean suppliers. We're only followed by US, but even so, we have the majority of it. And this is really relevant because the soybeans are very energy rich crops. So you can do it like a lot of different things with it. Of course, you can feed the population, but you could also produce fuels not just to transportation systems, but also to industry. So it was seen in Brazil as a strategical move on the energy scarcities towards scenarios, so to speak.
And I think a bit of the problem also with soy, so like these kind of feedstocks, I actually work with, for example, raisin,
Yeah.
bioproducer.
Yeah.
So because we were so a bit on like a policy related issues. So that's why I think especially the exporting countries of the European Union will not appear on the list there, because they have way stricter regulations of like sustainability regulations of accepting these biofuels, because they actually, I mean, they cap, I think like 4 or 5% the amount of food and feed crops. Biofuels. So and there's so limited production of advanced biofuels or of mature biofuels. Because I mean that's the issue, which is on there also, that the majority is used for the meal production, and most of European member states have already now banned these indirect land use change feedstocks for the biofuel production. So I think that's the issue that also like Brazil needs to face when wanting to export to the European Union, that the sustainability standards are way higher when they use such feedstocks. So,
I'm just going to address some of these concerns in the next slides, but you're 100% correct. What the first counter arguments to the exploitation of these crops and this biofuels production is, okay, this is the first thing is this is not good for the environment. And the second thing is that it could be used to feed the population, not just to produce fuel. And that's one of the reasons that explains why the government is doing this propaganda and why the president himself came to Europe in order to try to persuade this very strict European regulations in order to allow because we also have to be fair and think that, of course, Europe is not only protecting itself from an environmental perspective, but it also securing the production of its own industry. Something I will address in the future, but something I like is kind of happening when European Union addressed the competition with electric bus that comes from China. So we don't have to be naive enough in order to think that all the politicians are only think about the environment. They are so nice. No, they are trying to secure, which is of course very understandable. They are trying to secure their own national industry. But anyway, it's true that the criticism is true when it comes to the let's say the cons. Everything has a pro and a cons, and the cons on production and expanding soybean production in Latin America and Brazil. And the biggest one is this map explains it. So I think you all know the Amazonian rainforest in Brazil, very famous. And the second, not that famous, but also very, very important, is the Atlantic forest. Amazonian rainforest is not only responsible for the majority of biodiversity population in Brazil regarding not just animal but also plants and future development of medicine and new treatments and everything, but it also is a very important climate regulator worldwide. So everyone wants to protect Amazonia, right? But when you look into the map of the cropland expansion, you see that, so this is the most important production site of, we call it Cerrado, of biofuels. But when you look into Amazon, you see that it is expanding into the rainforest. And this is very, very dangerous. So this is the time frame, and you see that the blue is Amazon, right? And you see that the blue is growing. So what these numbers means is it means that it's not only being constricted to this very perfect area here, which is amazing to the crop production, but it means that the producers of soybeans have been expanding, sometimes illegally, but sometimes legally, here and here, because when you look into the improvement of the already existing sites, it's not comparable to the expansion in all the regions that we look. See, the green and the red. The red is always big. When it doesn't matter where you look. So this is very concerning to the environmental protection criticism, and that's why I say that these environmentalists are right now. And yeah, as I told you, this is the Amazon rainforest, very important climate regulator and biodiversity site, and this is the Atlantic forest. When I lived in Brazil, I lived very close to this one, which is, they are very different biomes. In the picture you cannot see because they look just like forest, but they are very different biomes. This is much more connected to the ocean, waterway services, and the other is like deep forest and more difficult to be accessed. It's far from the big urban centers. You have to take some shots, have some governmental authorizations in order to that. But anyway, it's funny because if you are part of social society, it's not that easy to reach this very important and untouchable forest. But if you are a soybean producer, apparently you can just expand. And you see some these dots are very concerning because they are deep forest. They will not this is not supposed to be happening. So this is understandable because this is understandable and at the same time concerning. But this is almost unbelievable and worrisome to the government, environmental protection agencies. Yeah, and this is pictures of the sites. Any questions so far? No. Yes.
There's also concern because it takes like a lot of water to produce biofuels, and at the same time, if you're increasing that, like it takes like 9 to 10 liters for 1 liter of ethanol, so
yeah,
that will also bring the natural water down for use. Yeah. It's like clean water used for production.
Yeah, it's true. Some critics says that when Brazil sells a lot of these biofuels or even the crops to China, most not just to China, but that China is the biggest important. They say that by the end of the day, Brazil is not selling crops. Brazil is selling water, because some of these countries that Brazil sells for have scarcity scenarios on water. So that's why they cannot produce these fuels, and that's why they bought this crop, and that's why they buy from Brazil. So they say that Brazil is selling water, which is way worse than selling just the crops. And yeah, you're absolutely true. Correct. And yeah, that's so we think. Okay, so biofuels and crops are maybe not a very good choice. So electricity, why not? I mean, we have 60% of energy production in hydro. And please do not this is one map, and this map got only the electric energy, and this map that I have shown you before is the total amount of energy supply. So please do not, I know that they are similar, but this last one concerns electricity, because it is being thinking worldwide as one of the most progressive solutions regarding the transportation problem. So as I saw, Brazil spends a lot of energy in the transportation problem. So why not hydro? So we can defund biofuels if we want. We can invest in hydro. We have a lot of wind. We have a lot of solar. We can fund it and invest on hydro. So you see through the timeline, the time frame, we have almost like 60% of more of it of hydropower, and it happens because by lucky of the Brazilian government, we have very impressive waterfalls and almost the perfect landscape scenario in order to extract a hydropower. It's very impressive, and I can assure you that it's more impressive when you look at on site. I don't know if any of you have been. You have been in Iguaçu, right?
Yeah.
And it's breathtaking.
Amazing.
It's amazing. You can feel like almost the nature happening in front of your eyes. And yeah, we have a lot of extraction of this energy source, but again, coming to the criticism of the environmentalists, it's not harmless to the environment, because if you want to construct and extract this renewable and non-aggressive form of energy, you have to separate a big lot of the land, and most of the time flood it, and then you can extract this power from this very, very big sites constructed here. And when you do it, when you flood it, it means a lot of loss on biodiversity, of course, but sometimes also there's populations in these landscapes, and you have to remove this population, and you have a lot of problems with this. Yeah, so it's not that easy. So, in question regarding the electricity generation, no, right? Whenever I look at this map, I think if Brazil is doing the right stuff, because of course it's almost clean energy. It's not 100% clean, but yeah, we are not very much exploring the solar and the wind power as much as we could have done it. Of course, the waterfalls will remain where they are, and it's certain to have it in the future. But also, sometimes I think that we should explore more the opportunities that we have. So, if we want to do it, we have to do it quickly, because this is what's happening to the environment. So this is Rio de Janeiro city, which is the city that I have lived and worked for all these 10 years in the government. So this is where Rio de Janeiro is. And it was the former capital of the empire. It's the second most important city in the country. It only lost to GDP to São Paulo. But it's a very good case to be studied. So this is the heat map in the city, and this is the behavior of the tides. So the behavior of the sea flows and what is doing with the coast environment. So let's talk first on this one. The reddish it gets, the hotter it gets. So you can see that here in the coast, it is quite chill. So the population is not suffering very much with these very aggressive, intensive heat waves in the coast. But of course, what happens with the housing market is that you have to pay a lot of money to live here and have this beautiful view from the Copacabana and Brazilian beach landscapes. But if you are not so lucky, you have to live in the inner of the state. And why it gets so hot? Because here we have a chain of mountains.
Yeah.
And what happens to a landscape that has a lot of mountains between the ocean and the inner of the city?
The heat traps, the heat cannot exit towards the sea and
Yes.
traps inside, and it is a bubble that creates it. In India also it's the same thing because
Yes.
Himalayas and heat traps.
Yes, is one of the factors. Yes, so it explains the heat waves. So what else happens when you have the ocean breeze and you have a chain of mountains and then you have the rest of the city? We can environmentally think on what happens in this landscape. It means that any idea? It means that the vapor, so the steam, so to say, it comes from the ocean, it hits the chain, so it came as steam. So it hits the chain of mountains and it comes back to the city in forms of rains, because it condenses itself, it's not steam anymore. It becomes rain. And it has two the two, so to say, effects. One of this is, of course, the very, very intensive rains here. And the second one, it's very dry environment in the inner of the city. And of course, I think you know that when you combine heat with dry, it's like a catastrophe, right? So what is the effect of this in the transport network? Because I'm a transport specialist. I'm just going to show you the next slide, but I want to say some word on this one first. So this is the behavior of the tides through the years. So summer, sorry, it's Portuguese, but this color means summer, spring, winter, and autumn. And you can see that in all seasons, the behavior of the tides becomes more and more aggressive. Ressacas is a word in Portuguese that reflects how aggressive the ocean is to the coast. So whenever you have a ressaca, you have very violent waves regarding the coast. So more and more waves, more and more rain, and more dryness. And this is what's happening with the transport network. So this is what's happening to the train network. The train cannot operate because you have a lot of water and mud into the infrastructure. So the people wait until they realize that the train is not coming, and then they do all the work on their own feet. And now I'm going to show some slides on what's being reflected in Brazilian transport network in the different modalities of transportation. So the first one is trains. This is buses. This is my city, and this is the join the civil servant. This is a very regular train. A very regular bus, and this is what the population does in order not to be flooded and drawn through the water current. It's a coast city, right? So this is happening when the steam comes here and goes back, because the water will flow back to the ocean, and the more and more you have climate change, this cycle gets more intensive and more aggressive because you are adding more energy. Climate change is more energy, not less. So the more and more you put energy into this environmental system, the more it will react to it. Sometimes unpredictably, because we still are tracking as scientists what's happening in the urban systems with this different unpredictable physical reaction of the climate change. Most of it is still unknown to us and took us by surprise. So this is buses, this is cars, right? It's unbelievable. Some of these cars could not be used anymore after some of these droughts. This is damage to private property. This is just a car, but sometimes it goes into the houses. And you have a lot of damage to private property. Some of the citizens, when this happens, some of the citizens goes to the government and say, because you have defunded the climate change programs, this happened to my car and to my house. So your government had to pay me back for the work that you have not done. And most of the time the government says, oh, this is unpredictable, we could not know, this is not our fault, so you have to pay it yourself, you and your stupid car was not supposed to be here, right? And then you have, it's funny if you think about it, but it's also very critical to the society, because you are the bearer of the lost, but you are not responsible for the public policies that could have been done. So the government is almost in this perfect position, according to its speech, that I'm not responsible because it's unpredictable, but at the same time, I will not bear the costs. It's up to you. Of course, it's being continually debated in the court whenever this kind of citizen goes into the court, but it's still not a very stricted, there's no juridical guideline on how the Brazilian justice would address this kind of laws. This is a subway. Of course, subway is the first one to stop, always the first one to stop, because it's downstairs, right, of course, and then the rain goes into the subway system, and it's the first to stop. This is Rio de Janeiro again. Believe or not, this was very close to my house. Do you have any idea on how many times this cycling way fell?
20.
Not that much. That's not that dramatic, but it fell 4 times. It fell and then it was rebuilt, and fell and then again and then again. And this is the perfect example of this. This is a recycle. This is a particularly intense behavior of the tides. And sometimes when it fell, because it fell 4 times, right? There was people here that were dragged out. Some of them were dead. And then the government said, oh, it's unpredictable. And then they built it again with the different materials. And none of these materials were holding up to the corrosiveness and the impact of the tides. So it fell. Yeah. After it first fell, and never again I got into it. Even though they say it's perfectly safe, I'd rather not take my chances on it. Even though it's very beautiful,
Yeah.
you should go there once, not intersectionally, of course, but live close to it because you have a perfect view to the ocean. That's why it was very touristic, but not worth the risk, in my opinion. So the government say yes, then we need to change the buses, right? Because if the most part of the Brazilian transportation system is regarding roadway, and because most of the roadway transport modalities is done by buses, the vast majority, about 90% and something, is done by public transport, which is done by buses, because of everything I have already explained on the historical trajectories of the transportation network. It's quite obvious that you have to change the buses. So, okay, we'll electrify it, I promise, but how and which technology will we choose? Because you have different ways of electrifying, you have different technology to electric buses. You can do it bit by bit with the implementation of hybrids. You can be very conservative on the trolley bus, or you can go full electric with the BEVs, which is the battery electric vehicle. I trust you know the difference between these three, right?
Yes.
If no one knows, I can go into detail on this. So so this is a BEV, being electric charge. This is hybrid one that can be fueled either by electricity and internal combustion, either with biofuels or regular oil fuels, you choose. And this is a trolleybus that is being connected to the energy network through this equipment. All of these have pros and cons. The cons, I'm going to be very briefly because I think you all know, but you can also raise questions. The cons of this one is that you have to provide a very secure amount of energy and also the charging infrastructure. The energy is quite okay for us. We're not facing a very big energy crisis as some of the European countries are, but we have to pay for the charging infrastructure, and it's costly. And if you think that Brazil is an immense territory, it's like way more costly than it would be for tiny European countries compared, or even Japan compared to I mean, really, Berlin has about 1,500 buses on average running through the city. Rio de Janeiro alone have more than 5,000. Yeah, I was responsible for 2,000. When I lived there, it was chaotic. But I'm saying this just to give you a scale on the challenge that we face. We don't have the amount of money that very rich European countries have, and we have a lot of territory, and we have a lot of buses, so it's very more challenging to us. So this is the con on the fuel BEVs. The con of the hybrid one is that it is much more costly to repair, because it's more. I don't think we'll have time to discuss it, but it's a more intricate mechanism that has to connect the electric one and the internal combustion one. And there's also another con that is in Brazil and many different other Latin American countries. The public bus network is owned by the government. But what the government does is that it does not have the amount of workers and money to buy all the buses. So what it does is that it contracts, but because it's too costly, it has to contract for a lot of time. So 10 to 20 years of contract. So when you go to a hybrid one, it means that you lose a window of opportunity to electrify it for 10 to 20 years. So that's one of the cons. And the cons of the trolleybus is that it has to be permanently connected to the energy supply, which is an advantage of the fuel BEVs, and also that you have to use this technology to put the energy into it. And as I just told you, you have a lot of rain and storms because of climate change, and sometimes it's pretty common that it disconnects it. And the last one is that because some of the Brazilian cities, especially Rio de Janeiro, was the capital of the empire back in the days, it means that it has some castles and historical sites and many other things that scenarios, so to speak, that cannot be disturbed by this kind of it would discreditize the whole story. So the agencies that are responsible for historical conservation and cultural conservation, they denied the access to the construction of this trolley buses. So of course I can send it to you, and then I go into more details on the pros and cons and the current applications, both in Brazil and in just about the fucking Berlin. So how it goes in Brazil and German perspectives. I don't know how much time I have. This class goes until
1 hour.
1 hour.
4.
It goes until 4, so I have 1 hour. It's enough. So yeah, I think I gave you all this information in order to further discuss how it could be done both in Brazil and in Germany. I mean, this is the main question, right? And this is how the electric bus global sale is going. You see that China is going with flying colors on the BEVs market. Right now, I'm just talking about the BEVs, not much into trolleybus or hybrid ones, because it's the technology that is being more dominant on the sector. So, any question about that? Not ask this. So this is the behavior of the global scenario. Latin America is not even close to the competition, but it is important that we do not disregard it, because it's a very, very big landscape. So it's important to the companies that produce this kind of buses. We'll see it in more detail in the next slide. So this is the same map. This and this. The only difference is that in this, when you have definition of what's happening in the beginning, and in this one, you have this year. And this is BEVs and trolleybus. Trolleybus is the green, and the BEVs is the pinkish, reddish. So you go for a scenario that had almost none, so 4, into a scenario that you have more than 8,000 electric buses. That's why I am telling that even though the Latin America is not very competitive right now, it is been showing a lot of progress. And if you think on the size and on the future demand that Latin America will pose to the world in the industry, it's not actually to be disregarded.
One question.
Yes.
So here it's in use or?
In use, yes. And when you go into this amount, as I told you, the contracts goes to 10 to 20 years. So when you go into this amount, you count also for the buses that have been replaced. So you go to this number represent the replaced ones and the new ones. So this is the total buses that are in use right now, not accounting to the ones that have been discarded or going to be recycled.
Is Mexico in these numbers?
Yes, I'm going to show you some data on the particular on the particular countries in just a second. But first, I want to show you what's happened in terms of the competition of the companies. As I told you, China is dominating the market. So look at this. So it means this, right?
I don't even know the companies inside from BYD.
Yeah, yeah. Now you know. Yeah. So it's how can I say? This method was used in my PhD dissertation because I was much interested on what's happening into the formation of the value chain and how these different companies and countries are placing themselves in this very competitive scenario right now, because you have energy crisis. This is almost as I called it, this is almost the perfect storm, you know this term, right? So it's like the perfect crisis, because you have a crisis, an energy crisis happening in Europe. Germany is right now being affected by it. You have some countries that have been affected by war, and you have also oil crisis. I mean, oil is going dry and dry as we speak. And you have Latin America in the other side of the country with very big territory to be exploited, a lot of sun, a lot of everything. So the whole world looks at it and think, okay, how are we going to get money from it? So this is what's happening with Latin America. And it's what's happening with Germany right now, because I'm comparing these two countries, right? And what is happening with Germany right now is that Germany geopolitically is placed in the center of these different conflicts of war and facing at the same time the energy crisis. And at the same time, an economic crisis that affects more and more the automobile industry. So whenever the Brazilian president goes into Germany and talks to the prime minister, it's good that he has some ears to it, because if Germany loses the protagonism, this very long-term protagonism that it has been in the automobile industry, it will be a very deep effect on social economic indexes, so as GDPs and employment rates. So you see that I'm not only talking about how Germany is going to get more use of and more efficient of the existing energy network. I'm also talking about what Germany is going to employ in keep the employment rates and also the technological development and economic rates that it has been doing through the 20-30 years, because it has been put a lot of effort in this very conservative, as some authors say, because it took a while to get to the competition, the real competition into automobile industry, and that's why this is happening. So you see that everything that I'm talking about is connected. It's not just energy or environment. I'm also talking about GDP. And if Germany right now does not respond, not Germany, but also the different European countries that I'm going to show in this next slide, does not react to the Chinese competition, then Latin America will be their first client, not Volkswagen or Volvo. It will be BYD and Yutong or Foton. Of course, the Latin American countries will choose not based on the country, but it will choose on what is most beneficial for their own countries. If BYD is more secure and more cheap than the Volkswagen or you name it companies, then it's market, right? And this is the scenario of the manufacturer, and this is the avoided emissions, which is the most important data for the environmentalists. Avoided emissions on CO2 split. So, any questions? I think I spoke a lot of the geopolitical scenario. But it's important because you have to have one eye on the environmental, but also one eye on what's happening into the economy. And yes, this is, I don't know who asked me about the country. Yes, so this is what's happening in the Latin America in terms of the countries and how they are behaving in terms of the electrifying process of the buses. Chile is the one that is electrifying the most. Santiago, which is the city that has almost 90% of the buses. And when it goes into the manufacturers, not only to Chile, to whole Latin America. You have BYD followed by Photon. Unfortunately, I don't have a big map of Latin America as I had one of Brazil, but so that you have a scale of it. The Chile electrification process is 4,500. This is less than the fleet of Rio de Janeiro city. Chile compared to Brazil is like tiny, weeny, small country. It's a very important country, but it is like very small.
I mean, it basically only has Santiago.
Yeah, Santiago. No, they have more.
Chile, yeah.
Yeah, Santiago is the more important city. But what I'm saying is that compared to Brazil is like nothing. One city of Brazil is corresponded more electric buses that the whole country, the whole Chile has nationally.
Say that about Jessica, please.
No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But even so, you see that Brazil, I'm not saying just good things about Brazil, see bad things. So Brazil, even so it's that big and that rich compared to the Latin American countries, it has only 1,400 and something electrified, but I mean, it could do more, right?
Yeah.
So it's enough of criticism to Brazil right now. And again, you only see Asian manufacturers. And this is also one criticism that we can do to the Latin American countries. I mean, you are so big and you have so much energy and wind and solar power and blah, blah, blah. So why are you not developing your own companies? I mean, you do not to have you do not have Asia or any European country as your main exporter to this very important asset for your climate change protection strategy, which is the BEVs. You could produce these buses, right? But if we have time, we will address more of this problem with you in the future. But the main reason for it is that in order to do so, Brazil and other Latin American countries will have to develop very up-to-date technology, which is something that we do not have right now, although we have one of the biggest reserves of materials that is important to bus production nowadays, specifically lithium and cobalt.
It's in Chile, right?
It's in Chile and it's also in Brazil. We have a lot of it. So we have a lot of this production. A lot of countries are looking at our reserves right now. USA is the first one, of course. USA, of course, is the one that is looking into this, what they call it rare materials, because it will not secure just the battery, the BE. Whenever I'm talking about BEVs, the battery buses, but also will secure the supplies to chips, nanochips. That depends really much into this rare materials, so lithium, cobalt. So we are very good extractors of this material, but we still don't know how to process them in order to make the batteries or the chips and everything else. We will talk about it in a more detail in the future if I have time. So this is e-buses only regarding Brazil. This is the regular one, the one that you see usually passing the streets. The green trolley buses, and this the small one is for the BRTs. So you know what BRT is? It's the B-articulated bus that goes into the dedicated roads, BRTs. And again, the Asian companies, but you also have Mercedes-Benz, Marco Polo, and Volvo.
What was there?
Volvo, just one.
One.
Yes. Yeah, but there's an explanation of it because some cities do not have money yet to do the contracts that will buy like hundreds of buses. So what the companies do, and Volvo do it, is to offer one or two buses to a municipality as a trial or test. Then it goes for some months, and because some of the municipalities are a bit conservative or skeptical on whether these buses will be adapted into tropical weather. So some cities really have one or two, not as fully operating buses, but the one that are being tested right now. Yes, and this is what is happening in the interior of these buses. I don't think we will have a lot of time to talk about it, but what I have done in my research is to go piece by piece because I was interested in understand what's happening into the value chain of these buses. In order to do it, you have to understand where these different pieces come from, so you have a sense on what the different countries are investing and their strategies on the long terms in order to provide this this product. And what I could understand from the assessment is that the less intensive products in terms of technology and investments can be produced nationally, such as the axles, steering, even the braking. This is not really rocket science. But when you go into inverters, specifically batteries, you see this very big Chinese flag, or this German one with the compressor. So this is where the money is. Yeah. There's some assessments saying of the industry says that the total value of the EV can go to 60 to 70% just on the battery and the battery pack. So this is where money is. And some countries cannot be that much technological and money intensive to produce the batteries, so they can go to other accessories that are also a bit intensive on technologies, such as the inverter, the compressor, namely the hardware, I would say, and then they goes into second best strategy. So we cannot do the whole battery packs, but we will earn money from the hardware. This is not a bad solution if you cannot produce the battery for your own.
Marco Polo is a Brazilian brand.
Yeah, it's a Brazilian one. Yeah, it's a very important brand actually, and it is one of the responsibles for the production and assembly of the buses for the whole Latin America. Mm-hmm. So what it does is either to produce the chassis and the bodies and to connect them, and then it sells to hold it to different countries in Latin America. And also what happens is that once that a bus has this expiring date in Brazil, then it's not good enough to use in Brazil, but other Latin American countries say, oh, I want to buy it. I'm not so picky. Yes. And then they do this refreshing on the bus. Of course, it continues to be a very old bus, but it's sold to other countries. It does not only happens internationally, I mean regionally in Latin America, but it also happens within Brazil. So you have Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, which are and this is a very common behavior in the bus market. So you have this very rich and technology intensive localities. So whenever you go there, you will find very new, if you're lucky, you will find very new and up-to-date buses. But whenever it gets up-to-date expiring date, the municipality also say, okay, I'm going to put it on either on the trash, on the recycling companies, blah, blah. But these localities say, oh no, this is good enough for me. I'm not that picky, so I will buy this very old bus and I will call it brand new and it's good to go. It can be done internally in terms of a country, or it can be done internationally. So Brazil can do it to Chile, Paraguay, which is kind of close to the borders. And a good thing is that the bus can drive for itself, right? So it can just drive to the places that you want to deliver. You don't have to necessarily put it on a very big truck, on a ship. So that's why it's common, this kind of behavior in the bus market.
Usually are 10 years or 12 years.
It depends. It depends in the. There is not a specific. This is a good question, because I had a fight with it in the past.
No.
Because no, I have a fight with. I cannot say it, but with a mayor from Brazil. Let's put it this way. Because this mayor was saying, because I was doing also consultancies to different regions in Brazil, and this mayor said, okay, I want to electrify my bus fleet. And I say, okay. And he say, okay, I will pay you and your consultancy, and you drive the whole assessment on how I could do it. And I said, so okay, and he did it and delivered to the city hall. It was a fuss. There was this I don't know, this event. But then the mayor said, oh, but this is too costly. I don't know if I want to commit myself and my administration to put a lot of money into the electric buses into this 10 or 15-year scenario contract, because usually the contracts are defined by the times that the bus will expirate. So you don't have to put a lot of money on renewing it, because you do a contract for the same time that the bus will expire, and then when it does, you can have a new bidding and buy newer buses instead of just trying to reflect. Of course, this is accompanied by a strategy on recycling. So what the mayor says, oh, this is too much money. What if you say that this bus will not be running for 10 or 15 years? You can say that it will be running for 30 years. And I say, come on. It will be like a trashing on wheels, right? It is impossible. But why does not just the mayors do it? And I'm not just talking about Brazil. It's, as I said, it's a global market, because a part of the indications of the manufacturer, because when the manufacturer produces the bus, it says, oh, this is good, I'm responsible for the maintenance or the good use of it for 10 to or 15 years. And if passed by you, lose the guarantee. But a part of it, you don't have a law or international treaty or anything that states that the bus will last that amount of time. You understand what I'm saying? Because this is important, because if you do not have this regional, national, or even international regulation, it means that the owner of the contract can say that it will last as long as he wants. And once that the owner of the contract does it, it changed the whole financial spreadsheet of the bus. Because if it lasts 10 years, it means that it will produce financial results for 10 years. But you say if it lasts for 30 years, it means that for the same amount of money that you put on it, it will get a lot of money. But it's not true, because in reality, in the real world, the bus will just stop. And that's why sometimes we have some problems with politicians on that regard. So I think it was here, right? Yeah. Yes, and this is a good slide because it also treats on the relationships between manufacturers and governments. So this is the Brazilian factories of electric buses that are running right now, and this is the different products they are developing. So different technologies, different uses, and different specializations on different projects. And these are ongoing right now, with the exception of this one, which is a Chinese company, if I'm not wrong, but I think they're how it is. And does anyone know, and this is not happening just in Brazil, does anyone know why it was cancelled? Because when the company came to Brazil, the hire company, and say, okay, we're going to sell you our buses for your municipality and your region for this price, and the government say, okay, deal, let's sign the contract. But weeks before signing the contracts, there was this very tiny clauses on the contract saying, okay, Brazil, if we produce 100 buses and you only buy half of it, the other part you have to buy it mandatorily. So if you have a city and you only have the necessity to put 15, but Haiger produce 100, according to the contract, the mayor or the government will have to be responsible to buy everything which is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why the project was cancelled. It has not been just happening to Brazil, but yeah, they even had the place that it would be produced and the technology that it will be developed. But yeah. So enough of Latin America. This is what is happening with Europe. This is from last year. And as you can see, it's funny, right? It's very, very different from what's happening in Latin America. It feels like almost two different worlds. You see there's a fair share of the EVs, the pinky reddish, some, and this is not for the whole country, right? This is just for the new sales, for the new contracts that are happening right now, not the buses that are already operating. Because there are some countries and some cities that are saying, okay, now we have this law or this decree that all the new contracts have to be 100% electric or 90% electric. So, yeah, like Finland or Iceland. Again, Iceland is like this size in Latin American countries. And most of them are doing this. Others are very much still hanging on diesel and gas, and therefore getting the dependence on the supplies of these non-renewable fuels and the dependence on the geopolitical scenario, of course. Hydrogen is not really substantial right now. So what we see in the hybrid is, as usual, not much, but some countries are kind of using it as a way to test it. So to test the availability of the energy supply and how they can trust it. But when you take it as a full picture, you see that the competition is really going on through BEVs and non-renewables. Yes, if you have any questions, I will go into the German scenario. As you can see, the market is rising and rising. This data is from 2024. So it's going quite good right now. I mean, there are some different cities like Berlin. Berlin has a very aggressive regulation on electrification of BEVs. BVG is one of the I think the biggest company that's getting it. They're opening a lot of positions. They just opened one on manager for electrification buses projects, something like this. So this explains the behavior of Germany right now. And also, as I told you before, because Germany is trying to keep up with the Asian competition and not to fully discard the projection of the automobile industry right now. And this is the same data, but in more detail. So the revenues, the growing rate, pretty accelerated. Not something to be disregarded. Yeah, 2 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that we can find more up-to-date information. And the BEVs is what we call BEVs, the battery electric ones. And this is in the map, so you cannot say that I only show Brazilian maps. And this is how it's happening. So if you take apart Berlin, of course, you see that it's pretty much a concentration on the west, and with Cologne and Hamburg, and some cities are still dependent on the trolleybuses, which is the reddish version. So it's the reddish color and the German versions of the trolleybuses. So yeah, kind of impressive, but also concentrated. So the concentration of the industry applications on BEVs is not something that happens only with Latin America. This was one of the results of the assessment that I have made. And now, with the little time that we have, I will try to explain what is happening with the value chain and how it's happening differently in these two different scenarios. So I have sectioned the value chain in 6 different links, and I'm going into more detail on this. So in the terms of the industry behavior, the suppliers of the battery, which is the most intensive on investment and technology, are behaving on this way in Germany, and they are investing in these technologies, most of them going to lithium-ion cells, which is pretty much what is happening into the international scenario. And this is where they are building the plants and, of course, the application. This is only in the terms of the battery. And this is in the terms of charging infrastructure. And why it's important to separate this one? Because São Paulo, which is the richest city in Brazil, got a very aggressive and full of dreams project in order to electrify the whole fleet of the city of São Paulo. So what the mayor have done is to get federal funds from the federal government. So it used it to buy the electric buses. So what he has not done, can anyone respond what he forgot to do?
Infrastructure.
Exactly. He did not buy any almost any. And what happened in the next day?
Run out of battery.
You had a lot of empty buses in the city of São Paulo out of battery. And what happens to the buses when they are not used? They lost the value share, the value in the market, So, and at the same time, they get exposed to the weather, so corrosion, because you do not have ways to put in the weather, but it was not predicted. So you have corrosion, loss of value, corrosion. So this is important to coordinate. I know it feels almost like obvious, but there are some decision makers that does not do it. So you have to align these two different trajectories, and also you have to take a look into the assembly of the vehicle, because as I say, there are some companies. Maybe I forgot to say, there are some companies that sells you the whole pack, the whole buses. Usually the Asian ones sell you the whole buses, but there are some that sells you the chassis, and there are also others that sell you the bodies, and then you have another company that connects them. But usually the Chinese sell you the whole pack. And this is also one of the criticisms that they have faced, because some of the contracts of these companies that I have shown here says that these buses can only be they can only have the maintenance from the same company that sold you them, from the same company that sold you. So if BYD sells you a bus through your city, it means that sometimes you have to sign a contract that only the BYD engineers will have access to the battery pack. Of course, this is super sensitive and important to them. And it means, believe it or not, that sometimes if a bus breaks in Sao Paulo or have any kind of malfunctioning, it means that you have to put this bus in a ship and sell it all the way to China and wait for several months until a Chinese engineer say, okay, it's good to go, and then you put it again in a ship and then to Latin America again. Imagine the time and the money that it is putting into this process. So this is important for you to understand how the contracts in the industry is being shaped right now. And this is most explained about how sensitive the access to these materials are. And some of these companies say, okay, if you do it by yourself, if you put a Brazilian or a Chilean or a Mexican engineer to make the maintenance of these buses, it means that it will lose all that we could, but the goodness of our heart provide to this bus that you have bought. But this is, of course, industrial secrets and strategies, right? So the battery, the infrastructure, and the assembly. And last but not least, I think that I only have like 5 or 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, 15.
Sure, okay, nice. Fair enough. So, as I told you, I have separate the whole value chain in 6 different links. They are not like a line, but the idea is that they were more like a circle, right? Because it begins in the supply of raw materials, and as I told you, Latin America has a lot of it, specifically lithium and cobalt. It is important for you to know that when you think on a BEV battery, it does not only means that you have to put lithium and cobalt on your battery. You can have different sets of battery that are more adapted to one type of use, one type of weather. There's different technology pathways that you can use to build a battery, and it depends on the chemical design that you do inside of it. We will not have time enough to talk about it, but when you think on the global value chain, you can see that manufacturers have put in a lot of money in the lithium and ion lithium one. So it begins here and it goes all the way through the reverse logistics. So I have studied how differently strategies have been adopted both by Brazil and Germany in extraction of the materials, then extraction and processing, right? And the supply of onboard technology. And when I think on supply of onboard technology, this is important in different ways, both to Brazil and to Germany. So to speak, both to Latin America and to Europe, because all of these buses have to be climate adapted, because what is a bus if not a box of metal, right? And when you think of it in tropical scenarios, you see people that are being overheated inside of these buses, so it's very important that they have air conditioning. And the same thing happens in Europe. So if everyone knows what everyone have been through this last winter, so it was sometimes freezing in the bus. So the onboard technology is also important to measure the not just the climate, the temperature within the buses, but also how the electric battery will behave either in the super hot conditions, so they can either melt or can explode, or in the super low temperatures. Last week I was into bus-to-bus conference. Has anyone been there? It's this big fair that happened here in Berlin on the biggest. It was very nice on the biggest manufacturers of battery electric vehicles. It was very nice. Yeah, they had buses and demonstrations from. It was in the. I forgot the name of the. But I can show you. And buses of. It was here in Berlin. And yeah, they organized it, but the name of the
But
yeah,
we had a lecture also with
what?
we had a lecture also with bus to bus.
Yeah, so yes, precisely. So I was there, and there was this whole discussion on the onboard technology. The different companies were presented, BYD were there, and they were showing some buses where the heating systems were here, and now they are putting it more like here on the basis of the vehicle, because when you put it here, is in the same place that people will sit, and usually what you have here is your phone, so it would be very close to the heating system, and now they're putting it here because hot air usually goes to higher places, and in Brazil it's the other way around, so they have to find a way to put the air conditioning on the top of the buses because the cold air will to the opposite direction. Is yeah, you have to think on everything. Then battery assembly and vehicle integration. I just share some word about it. Charging and energy infrastructure, which is something that some decision makers forget sometimes. Fleet operation, which is very much tied up to the way that the contracts are designed. And last but not least, reverse logistics. It's funny because Brazil has a lot of supply of raw materials, as I told you before, which is something that Europe does not have. Sometimes you have to go to some African countries in order to explore and get some imports on lithium. Latin America really don't have to do it. And at the same time, going to the bottom, Latin America has a lot of experience on recycling, like a lot. And many of these experience are tied up to social associations. So different peoples do the pickup and parts of the buses, and they do it like almost endogenously, and they can process it to sell back to the manufacturers and get money for the communities, which is something that we don't really see happening a lot in Germany. So what Germany is doing right now is invest in companies that can technologically assess the dimension of recycling. So not much of a social approach, but more technological one. So this is the assessment of the BEV's value chain in Brazil, and then I'll show you how it's being developed on Germany. So these numbers here is the same numbers It's the same. Sorry, it's the same information that we have here, but with numbers. So nothing changes. All and these numbers correspond to the links of the chain. Remember not to think it as a straight line, but as a circle. So what you see is that Brazil has a high capacity on extraction of these materials, but low engagement with high technological services. So it can extract the lithium and the cobalt, but it can obviously transform it into a set of batteries. Later we have the supply of onboard technology, where Brazil and other countries of Latin America are doing a really good job on getting the right temperature on the bus sets because of environmental reasons, of course. The other way around would be the people not getting to the buses because it's so hot, so they had to invest on it. And then you have battery assembly and vacuum integration. The Latin America does not have much of a problem with integration of the pieces. It has problems with the production of the pieces. That's why the number 4 is still under development and also lacks standardization, because this is also important. It's important that you have a federal regulations that sets how the charging systems would be in the national way, because the other solution would be every municipality have different charging infrastructures, and it's very complicated for the energy agencies to set these different regulations for each locality. And then fleet operation and maintenance is quite okay, and reverse logistics is still under development, but with high potential associated to community engagement. And this is how it's going in Germany. So you see, I have mapped each link and assessed them, and I set up where they are strong and where they are still lacking either investment or technological development. So this is for Germany. It's constrained by the mineral availability of these rare materials. Not really a problem with onboard technology. There's very, very competitive IT companies in Germany dedicated to it right now. The battery assembly and vacuum integration is threatening, as we just saw, by foreign competition. I trust that you have seen what the European Union has done on terms of fines to Chinese companies, right?
The tariffs.
The tariffs, yeah. Some authors are calling it the commercial war. This is number 3. Number 4, charging and energy infrastructure. It's quite okay, no problem with standardization so far. Operation and maintenance are going good, quite good with both IT firms in Europe and Latin America, and the reverse logistics and recycling, as I told you, is taking a very different approach than in the Latin American countries. They are even investing on chemicals that are more adapted to give corrosionless process on the batteries, because no one still knows what to do with the depleted batteries. Some companies are talking about second use. Other companies are talking about to use these batteries on housing, but this is still a problem. So this is just some policies recommendations. So Germany is building on a well-established automotive base, although this automotive base is being threatened by the economic crisis and Asian, namely Chinese competition. We have seen that very famous and historical plants in Germany have been closing their doors. So it's very important. This is the main policy recommendation that I would say that Germany keep up with competition, because if it does not happen, then it means that it would probably lose the protagonism in the regional European market, but also the race to the future in the Latin American countries, which will be a very important market share in the upcoming years. So it's an inner battle, but also an outside battle in the long term. And for Brazil, it benefits, of course, from the abundant mineral and solar and wind resources, but it also has to invest on technology and infrastructure if it wants to remain competitive in the upcoming years. Because if Brazil does not do so, it will lose the protagonism in the Latin American market because it's the most important right now, again to the Chinese one. And the Chinese companies are already doing this when they talk to the countries, okay, give me your bus, I will pay for them to be have maintenance in China, and then it's already happening. So Brazil have to really be careful on the strategies that are being developed right now. Yeah, more German policy implication is a coordinated industrial policy that links with the EU measures. So Germany could really profit from the EU relations. And this will be important to secure the stockpiles and continue flow of the materials that are needed to the assembly and production of the buses. And same goes to Brazil, and most important thing is the funding on RET in order to not get too dependent on the mineral resources, because someday they will be depleted, and it has to be, and this would have to be a way out the technological development. And this is the last slides. There are some references I could give you. Of course, I will send you the link. The first paper that I produced was an assessment on how these national policies are being drawn both in Europe and in Latin America. Then my PhD thesis that go much in detail, not on the policies, but on the behavior of the value chain. And we have this M2G symposium. I trust you know of the symposium. It happens almost every year in M2G, but it's organized by M2G, but it happens in different countries of the world. I remember that 2024 it happened in Kyoto. Last year it was held in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. I was the main organizer. It was very interesting. There is a whole web page in M2G website dedicated to this symposium, because we were able to get not only the presence, but the participation and the slides. If you go to the website, you can have access to the slides of the stakeholders from the Brazilian National Bank, important private stakeholders such as Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz were with us, the transportation ministry, the foreign, how do you say it, the General Consulate, the Ombudsman from Germany and Brazil, that was explaining the foreign policies regarding electric buses into Latin American countries. So you can check this out on the M2G website. This was the last slides. I'd like to thank you, and also be open for some questions if you have. But thank you. I feel that I just spoke too much, but it was a whole lot of information that I have for you. And I know this is a very new subject. It's a burning topic right now. Everyone's talking about a lot of it. And as I could see in my research, the scenarios and the landscapes are completely different on what's happening in Europe and Latin America, but also you can see some synergies, how they can profit from each other and the upcoming policies. So, yeah, if anyone has questions, you have to question. Yeah.
What are the plans for recycling these batteries? Because we are increasing the number of the fleet, the electric fleet, but down the line, 15 years, 20 years, we will have to take care of these dead batteries also that are not so efficient. So
you mean the battery?
The batteries, yes. Because like you said, you are using the old buses and then manufacturing it, but the battery is a different.
Yeah, this is almost the question of $1 million right now, as we say it in Brazil, because the pathway, the technological pathway to the recycling of the batteries is not yet defined. It is right now, there's right now a technological race on which company will develop the perfect solution, so to speak, on what to do with these batteries. And I risk to say that the company that do it will secure a lot of money each upcoming years, because what is happening right now is all these countries that I've shown are very much worried of running out of oil, either because the oil is eventually dry up or because the geopolitical pressures. So what these pressures are doing with these different countries, Russia into the electric bus market and solutions. So they develop a lot of buses, okay, and then we have a lot of electric buses, but they don't think in the long way on what to do with the technology. So we know that these technologies hold a lot of chemicals that are really bad to the environment, but they still don't know what to do with. There are some countries that are talking about putting them on the ground and then a lot of soil on it. There are some countries that are talking about throwing it in the ocean, as they did in the past with nuclear waste, if you remember this. So there's not yet a perfect solution, unfortunately. But as I told you, specifically in the terms of Germany, there are some companies that are even being funded by the federal government, and calls for universities and centers of researchers funded by federal government money, Germany, of course, that are destined to provide the solutions, but yet not a solid, structured pathway, technological pathway.
Because it would not make sense if you're buying batteries from China and then reselling it back to recycle it there, because they are actively growing. Because I think so Germany and Europe was like 5 years behind coping up with the electrification of the fleets, and now.
And there's also the locking problem, because if you buy a BYD, for instance, bus, and the battery can deplete it, and you have a battery from Marco Polo bus, you cannot just something that kind of happened with the phone chargers, remember?
Yeah.
So this is a way for the industries to set up a lock-in and also to secure the dependency of the buyers. So this is very typical of commercial wars. And there are some authors that say that the more and more this technology will develop and hopefully get cheap, it will be more difficult to the companies to set up these traps, the lock-in effects. So, but it's something that we will still have to wait and see. We wait a lot of it to happen with the phones, and there are still some companies that produce the chargers that are only accessible to their specific products. So, but this is not only happening with the BEV industry; it's like worldwide.
Are you rushing into it? Like you're rushing into just implementing and then reducing the oil load from the countries just to satisfy the political needs, or like we will have to think the death of these batteries and like down from is saying, are we rushing into this technology or investing so much into it without knowing an exit plan? It can backfire like in 20 years.
Yeah. There are countries that have done pledges to reduce, and you saw that in Europe there are a lot of them that say that okay, from now on we will only buy electric buses, and this is of course a strategy to secure the energy protection. I mean, not to be too dependent on the oil reserves, but it could also backfire because electricity is also a form of energy. It's just different. It's a processed form of energy, but it's still one. And if you do not have a very secure access to this form of energy, then if you have a problem with oil network, your oil transport network is committed to this kind of, because the inner combustion buses, they are very you can do whatever. You can put a lot of them. You can put biofuels, you can put regular fuels, you can put fuels that come from usage of waste. But in the electrical buses, you have to put electrical energy. So it's something that will have to be thought beforehand. So yeah, I will be very happy to send, I don't know if Massimo is sending it to you, but if you send me maybe an email, I can share this slides with you, and also the presentations from the Mobility to Grid symposium that happened in Brazil, and also the results of the thesis. So thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ai, obrigada.
Sim.
Não queria falar português, mas claro. É muito diferente, mas nós orientamos. O que você achou? Incrível. Eu sou mais capaz de trabalhar em escola de arte. E então, para quem quiser ver mais, ainda vai fazer. Portanto, senti algo das duas todas. Mas sim, eu sou mais da parte mais social, o que acontece com as pessoas. Mas a minha avó já desde pequena no quintal.
E eu também brasileiro, e eu era responsável pela fábrica de lixo. Especificamente na cidade de e também pelos processos de eletrificação. E aí, eu fui fazer o revelado, na TUBNI.
Sim.
E é muito interessante quando você trabalha com isso, por exemplo. Já que eu falei brasileiro, eu não pude conversar com o preço. Porque isso poderia ser visto como produção. E quando eu mudei, eu fui um pesquisador africano, eu precisei falar com eles. E aí você muda completamente.
Eu tenho um bocadinho este problema da parte empresarial, então vai trabalhar com